Tonight, I'm going to tell you a story, but not just any story. This one is dark, unsettling, the kind that sticks with you long after it's over. You might feel a chill, even if you're wrapped in a blanket. And if you're alone, you may find yourself checking over your shoulder, because what I'm about to share with you actually happened, or at least that's what the survivor says. So, get comfortable, if you can. This is the story of the house at Bellevue Hollow. It was in late October, the kind of autumn where the trees have all turned brittle, their leaves painting the streets in rust and gold. Hannah Barnes, a 32-year-old real estate photographer, had taken on a new assignment just outside a small, fog-shrouded town in northern Maine. She'd been hired by a company she'd never worked with before, Hollow Pines Realty, to photograph an old Victorian house that had recently gone back on the market. The email said the owners had left in a hurry, and the property had been sitting untouched for years. Hannah was used to strange jobs, but this one felt different from the start. The email didn't include a contact number, only an address and a message, "Please arrive before sundown." She got there around 4:30 p.m. The sky was already beginning to dim, casting long shadows across the driveway as she pulled up. The house stood 3 stories tall, gray and peeling, with tall, narrow windows that looked like hollow eyes watching her approach. There was no car in sight, no neighbors for at least half a mile. Just a rusted gate, slightly open, and a house that seemed to be holding its breath. As she walked toward the porch, the wooden boards creaked under her boots. She reached for the door handle and found it already turning in her hand. Unlocked. Inside, the air was stale, like it had been sealed for decades. Dust hung thick in the sunlight, slicing through the curtains. She called out, "Hello? Anyone here?" But there was no response, only the quiet groan of the old house settling. She began taking photos, the grand staircase, the parlor with furniture still draped in white sheets, the long hallway lined with portraits of people whose eyes seemed too vivid, too focused. As she moved deeper into the house, she noticed the temperature dropped sharply, and then she heard it, a voice. Not close, not loud, just faint, whispering. She froze, listened, nothing. She shook it off, assuming it was the wind, and continued upstairs. The bedrooms were untouched. Beds still made, closets filled with clothes from the 1950s. In one room, a dusty crib still sat in the corner. But the real horror hadn't begun yet. It was when she entered the attic that everything changed. The attic stairs were narrow, and the light switch didn't work. She used the flashlight on her camera. The space was cluttered with boxes, old toys, broken dolls, and something else. Something in the corner, hidden beneath a sheet. It was shaped like a mirror, tall and narrow. Curious, she pulled the sheet off. The mirror was framed in black wood, carved with symbols she didn't recognize. The glass was clean, too clean, and when she looked into it, she didn't see herself. The reflection was the room, yes, but she wasn't in it. The light behind her flickered, and then she heard footsteps on the stairs. Slow, deliberate, climbing up toward her. "Hello?" she called out, backing away from the mirror. No answer. The footsteps stopped, just outside the attic door. She turned off her flashlight, heart pounding in the dark. Silence. Then, a tap on the mirror from the inside. She turned and ran, crashing through boxes, nearly tripping down the attic stairs. But as she reached the second floor, the hallway had changed. It was longer, darker, and every door was open now. From each room, she could hear whispering, low, urgent. She bolted down the stairs, but the front door was gone. Not shut, gone, just more wall. She tried the windows, but they wouldn't budge. That's when the lights went out. In the pitch black, she could hear movement upstairs. Multiple sets of footsteps, and the creak of the attic door swinging open again. Panicked, she ran into the kitchen, looking for anything, a weapon, a phone, and found a newspaper on the counter. The date said October 28th, 1963. Then she saw the headline, "Family vanishes from Bellevue Hollow home. Photographer last seen entering premises." The photo beneath the headline was blurry, but she could make out her own face, her clothes, even the scar on her chin. She wasn't just trapped, she was already gone. She screamed, and from the hallway something answered, a chorus of voices, male, female, children, all whispering the same thing over and over, "Join us, join us, join us." She turned and saw shadows moving, no gliding, toward her, faces pale, stretched in frozen screams, and at their front was her, or something wearing her face. Its eyes were hollow, its mouth was smiling far too wide. She backed away until her back hit the mirror, and then she was pulled, not through the glass, but into it. The The last thing she saw was the mirror's reflection, the house behind her empty again, still, silent, and the reflection of her own horrified face staring back from inside the glass. The next morning, the real estate company received the photos. Every room captured perfectly, except one. The attic photo was different. In it, standing beside the black-framed mirror, was Hannah. Only, the real Hannah was never found. To this day, the house at Bellevue Hollow remains on the market. The listing has changed hands countless times. Every new photographer sent there disappears. And every time, the last photo in the set shows the same mirror and a new face trapped inside it. If you ever get an offer to photograph or visit an old house in northern Maine, especially one listed by Hollow Pines Realty, maybe just say no, because that house doesn't want to be sold, it wants to be fed, and now it's hungry again. So if you're hearing my voice right now, you made it to the end. But don't relax just yet. Sometimes these stories have a way of following you. Sleep tight tonight, but maybe leave a light on, just in case the mirror finds you too. The road was empty for miles, lit only by the dim glow of the moon slicing through the heavy clouds. Liam kept his hands steady on the steering wheel, his phone buzzing non-stop in the passenger seat. He ignored it. He was heading to a small, forgotten town nestled deep in the woods of Maine, where he'd inherited a house from an uncle he never knew existed. The letter that brought him here was old-fashioned and unsettling. No return address, just a wax seal and a simple message. It's yours now. Take care of it. He arrived just after midnight. The house stood alone, surrounded by trees that leaned in too close, their branches clawing at the sides like they wanted in. The structure was massive, Victorian style, rotting yet stubbornly upright, and the gate creaked open as if it had been expecting him. He stepped out, the ground soft and damp under his boots. The air smelled like wet leaves and something else, something metallic, like old blood. Inside, the house groaned as it adjusted to his presence. Dust hung in the air, thick like fog, and every step he took was muffled, like the floor didn't want him heard. The hallway was lined with portraits. The faces in the paintings watched him as he passed. Their eyes weren't just painted, they seemed alive, shifting slightly when he wasn't looking. He set up camp in the least decayed room he could find, locking the door behind him even though no one else was supposed to be there. Sleep came hard. The creaks and whispers in the walls never stopped, and at 3:12 a.m. his bedroom door rattled. Just once. Soft, almost polite. He didn't move, he didn't breathe, and it didn't happen again. The next morning he found scratches on the inside of the door, 3 long ones, low to the ground as if a child with claws had tried to get in. Over the next few days, he explored. The house was much larger than it looked from the outside, with endless rooms, staircases that led nowhere, doors that opened to brick walls, and mirrors that didn't show his reflection. One mirror showed a woman standing behind him, but when he turned, there was no one. In the mirror, she remained, smiling, eyes black, lips whispering things he couldn't hear. In the attic, he found journals. His uncle's handwriting was frantic and slanted, the ink smudged with what looked like tears. Pages talked about them living in the walls, about how the house was a mouth that never stops chewing. He wrote that the longer you stay, the more the house remembers you, the more it wants to keep you. That night, Liam tried to leave. The gate was gone, not just closed, gone. Trees had grown where the road used to be. Thick, ancient trees that hadn't been there just hours before. He ran through the woods, but no matter which direction he went, he ended up back at the house. Each time, the front door would be wide open, lights on, waiting. He started seeing her more often, the woman from the mirror. She would stand in doorways, behind curtains, outside windows, always smiling, always silent. Her head tilted too far to one side, like her neck had been broken long ago. Once, she spoke. Just one sentence. "You're part of it now." Her voice didn't echo. It sank into the air like a stone dropped into black water. The whispers in the walls grew louder. Sometimes he could make out words. They begged, pleaded. "Help us. He won't let us go. We're still alive." He tore into the walls, and inside he found things. Bones, pieces of furniture, and once a human eye still wet, blinking up at him before it turned to ash. He found a trapdoor beneath a rug in the dining room. It led to a tunnel that spiraled downward, deeper than the earth should go. The air was ice cold. He heard children laughing below. When he followed the path, he found a vast underground chamber with a massive wooden chair at the center. Chains were bolted to the stone floor. and the walls were covered in carvings. Names, thousands of them, all scratched in with fingernails. His uncle's journal had said, "If you sit in the chair, you see the truth, but once you see it, it never lets you forget." He sat. The chamber went silent. A light came from nowhere. Then he saw them. Dozens of people, twisted and pale, their mouths stitched shut, their fingers long and sharp. They circled him, their eyes full of sorrow. The woman was among them, standing behind the chair, her hands on his shoulders. She leaned in and whispered, "This is the house. We are the house. You belong to us now." He woke up in his bed. Daylight. Silence. No evidence of the tunnel or the chamber, but the carvings had begun appearing on the walls of his room, slowly, line by line. At night, he heard scratching beneath the bed. He tried recording it, but every recording was just static and breathing. His phone never worked. His calls never went through. He found a photograph in one of the drawers. It showed a family standing in front of the house in the 1800s. He was in the photo, standing in the back, wearing clothes he'd never seen before, same face, same eyes. His uncle wasn't his uncle. He was him, reborn, recycled, trapped in a loop the house created to feed itself. On the seventh night, the woman came again, no longer smiling. Her eyes were full of tears now, her voice shaking. "If you stay one more night, you won't be able to leave." He packed his bag, tried the windows, the doors. Everything was sealed. He lit the curtains on fire. The house didn't burn. The flames flickered, then turned blue, then vanished. The walls repaired themselves. The whispers turned to screams. The portraits bled. On the eighth night, he gave up. He sat in the chair again. This time he welcomed it. The house sighed, content. The portraits smiled, and the woman? She stood next to him, whispering to the next traveler who would come down the road, drawn by the same letter, the same lie, the same fate. The house is still there, still watching, still hungry, and someone, somewhere, just opened a letter with a red wax seal that reads, "It's yours now. Take care of it." There's a town nestled deep in the Appalachian Mountains of West Virginia, one that you won't find on most maps. It's not that people forgot about it, it's more like they chose to. The locals call it Marrow Creek, but you won't hear them say the name out loud, not unless they've had a few drinks or feel like tempting fate. Back in the early 1900s, Marrow Creek was a thriving coal town. Families settled, children played in the streets, and men worked the mines that burrowed like veins through the mountains. But the mines weren't the only thing dug deep beneath the earth. It started in the fall of 1914, when miners broke into a cavern that wasn't marked on any survey maps. It wasn't natural. At least, not in the way caves are usually natural. The walls were too smooth, the air too still. And then there were the markings, symbols carved into the stone, not in any language the company geologists could identify. But they kept digging. Production quotas mattered more than superstition. They opened something. Or maybe they just woke it up. The deaths began a week later. At first, they were accidents, supposedly. A man crushed beneath a collapsed tunnel, another falling down a shaft. Then it got worse. One miner was found torn apart in the mess hall, though no animal tracks were found, and the doors had been locked from the inside. By the end of the year, the mining company pulled out. Survivors were paid to keep quiet, and Marrow Creek was left to rot. But not everyone left. Fast forward a century. In 2021, a British documentarian named Elise Moore stumbled across a faded news clipping while researching abandoned towns for a YouTube series. She was intrigued. There was almost nothing online about Marrow Creek. That in itself was strange. She pitched the story to her American producer, and within 2 weeks, she and her crew were flying into Pittsburgh with plans to drive the last 100 miles. It was supposed to be a 3-day shoot. Interviews, drone footage, some historical reenactments maybe. Elise loved the macabre. She'd done exposés on cult towns in Utah, ghost stories from the Scottish Highlands, even a piece on cursed islands in Canada. But Marrow Creek would be different. It felt different. They arrived on a gray October morning. Fog hugged the mountains like a second skin. The town was barely more than a handful of buildings. Rotting wood, shattered glass, nature reclaiming everything. Still, the bones of the place remained. A general store. The church. The mine entrance, choked with rusted metal and moss. That first night, Elise couldn't sleep. She kept hearing something outside their rented cabin, slow, dragging footsteps through the leaves. When she looked through the curtain, there was nothing, just trees. By the second day, the crew started complaining. Cold spots, whispers they couldn't place, gear going missing or failing entirely. Elise laughed it off until they found Danny, the sound tech, sitting on the church steps at dawn. His eyes were wide open, his mouth too. He was breathing, but catatonic. His fingernails were torn and bloody, as though he'd tried to claw something out of his skin. They drove him to the nearest hospital over 2 hours away. He never spoke again. Back in Marrow Creek, Elise debated calling it off, but curiosity gnawed at her. That night, she went back to the church. Alone. It was colder inside than out. The air smelled like mildew and something metallic. As she swept her flashlight across the pews, she saw the symbol. The same one from the mine, scratched into the altar over and over, like someone had been trying to warn her or summon something. She didn't hear the whisper. She felt it, in her ear, like breath without breath. It watches. The flashlight flickered out. When it came back on, there was a figure at the end of the aisle. Tall, thin. Its face was wrong, not deformed, just unfinished, like someone had started molding a face from clay and stopped halfway through. Elise ran. She didn't even remember doing it, only that she was suddenly outside, gasping, barefoot. She had no memory of leaving the church or losing her shoes. She and the remaining crew left that morning. The footage they recovered was scrambled, warped until the last few minutes of Danny's B-roll. In it, the camera focuses on the mine entrance. Just before the tape cuts out, a whisper is audible. Elise. It's her name, spoken in her own voice. But she had never recorded that. She was never near the mine. Back in London, Elise tried to forget, but things followed her. Lights flickering at odd times, her name whispered behind closed doors. Dreams of tunnels, narrow, endless, always descending. 2 of the crew went missing within months. One walked into the sea in Nova Scotia, fully clothed, never seen again. Another was found in her flat, dead from dehydration, though her fridge was full. Elise stopped filming. She moved to rural Wales. But the dreams didn't stop. Sometimes she wakes up with dirt under her fingernails. And just last week, her doorbell rang. There was no one there, only a small piece of coal on the doorstep. Warm to the touch. She's thinking of going back. She says she needs to know. But those of us who've heard her story, we know better. Marrow Creek doesn't let people go. Not really. It waits.